Hello, Weil Alumni. I'm David Gail, a partner in the private equity group resident in the Dallas office. I'm beyond thrilled today to be here with Glenn West, a Weil legend, as many of you know. Glenn joined Weil in 1987 when he opened the Dallas office. For 2 decades, he served as the managing partner of the Dallas office and a member of the management committee. Glenn, together with others, including Barry Wolf and Tom Roberts, helped create the Weil that we know today, a premier global law firm. Glenn also helped create the private equity practice, not just at Weil, but as a discipline that many of our peer firms have now copied. It's wonderful to be here today with Glenn, and I hope you'll learn from him as much as I have over the years. So Glenn, I want to start with talking about your management style. You were a pivotal leader over the history of Weil's global expansion, as I referenced, and I was curious if you had a particular management philosophy that helped you achieve success and, more importantly, helped the Weil grow into what it is today.
Yeah, thank you, David. It's great. It's great to be with you again, and wonderful to see all the great things that Weil continues to do. In terms of a so-called management style, I always liked to distinguish between management and leadership. And what I've found, lawyers in particular can't be managed, and so I've never tried to manage anybody in any aspect of my various leadership roles. I think instead you have to try to lead, show people how it's done, and then let them do it, and then to the extent you can, stay out of the way, and then just be available to keep people motivated and functioning in whatever it is that we're trying to do together.
Any particularly challenging moments as you led an otherwise ungovernable group of people?
Probably too many to mention, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Although there was a time when we were trying to completely change the focus of the firm into a more global, international focus, where there was a lot of pushback from people that were not as excited about it as I and other leaders in the firm were. And that was somewhat challenging, but we got through it, and the firm is better for it.
So along those lines, you were very much a forward thinker, including, as I mentioned earlier, creating the private equity discipline, as I'll call it. It was not a distinct practice until largely you created it along with others at the firm. What's different, I guess, about the practice of private equity M&A today versus the early days of the industry?
Well, I think there's a lot that's different. I mean, for one, when we started practicing private equity, we didn't even call it private equity. Nobody knew what it really was. It was different. It was something distinguishable from traditional corporate M&A. There were different needs and different issues, but it wasn't really called private equity at that time, and then it gathered that name, and then the biggest transformation, I think, is just the number and depth of in the private equity industry of firms and funds. There were probably, when we got started back in the early 90s, there were probably only about 10 major private equity firms throughout the world, and we represented most of them, or a good number of them. And the largest firms were, if you had a $500 million fund, that was huge. Now that's, lower middle market, or middle market at best. And they didn't even have all those tiers back then. There was venture capital, and then there was real private equity. And typical distinguishing feature was, did you do LBOs or didn't you do LBOs? Did you invest in companies, or did you buy companies? And so that's the biggest distinction I see, is that it's just exploded, and now everybody is a private equity lawyer, and there's private equity firms all over the place.
I think everyone might pretend to be a private equity lawyer. I think those of us who were trained by you know what it means to actually be a private equity lawyer.
Well, I
Getting
hope
back
so.
to getting back to being, trained not just by you, but in the Weil system. Weil's long been a thought leader, and that continues today with the private equity sponsor sync that we publish quarterly. Can you just talk about kind of the legacy of thought leadership, not just at Weil, but particularly in the PE space? How did it come about? I know you've been very involved in it from the early time, from your early days at the firm, even continuing on today in your retirement.
I think well, first of all, while unlike other firms of its status and has always been very focused on making sure that we basically trained as a first principle. We trained excellent lawyers. And in the private equity space in particular, since there were so many nuances and differences between representing private equity firms and representing regular corporates, it was important that we teach and talk about what those differences were. And we were always focused on making sure that we didn't sort of keep that knowledge internal, but share it with our clients. We were very forward thinking. I remember one of the biggest things we did early on was actually developed an onboarding booklet that we used for all the portfolio companies of our private equity clients, because a lot of those private portfolio companies were being acquired by private equity, and then they were continuing to use their historical counsel for a lot of their, regular work, but sometimes they were not focusing on what was going to be important when we had an exit transaction. And there was a lot of other issues like that about how to be a portfolio company of a private equity firm, how to interact with the private equity firm as a portfolio company of that private equity firm, how to work with outside counsel to the private equity firm as a portfolio company. And we created a template that a lot of our clients use to kind of onboard their portfolio companies to all of those issues. And that was part of our thought leadership in the private equity space. And we did the same thing in the acquisition finance business as well, because there were so many private equity issues that were so peculiar to the private equity industry. And of course, once we did that, everybody else copied us, and then it became so. There was no point in trying to hide it. So we shared it. We shared it freely, and it's worked out just fine.
So it seems like Weil's not only shared knowledge with private equity clients, but also, just as importantly, people. We've got an alumni base that spans the globe and spans industries, but many of whom have ended up either private equity funds or, as you mentioned, private equity portfolio companies, GCs, et cetera. Just generally speaking, it's a super competitive legal world out there. Any particular words of advice for what it takes to succeed in the practice of law generally, in particular outside of the Weil ecosystem?
Well, I think always learning. It being important to realize that once law school was over, you're not done learning. That's one of the biggest fallacies of the practice of law, that you basically just start practicing and you quit learning. And I think becoming an expert in something doesn't have to be some grandiose thing. It can be something so that you become known for it. Being willing to share knowledge with the bar and with various groups within the private equity industry, getting your name out there and getting known. All of those are important things that you have to do in addition to your day job of marking up documents and preparing disclosure schedules and trying to make deals and advising your private equity clients on the best approach to accomplish your objectives.
Thank you. So before we end here, we I mentioned earlier that you continue to be a fountain of legal knowledge, and I know you publish and write frequently. Can you just share with our alumni viewers what else you've been up to in your retirement?
Sure. I teach a class on M&A contract drafting at SMU, and also at supposed to be doing that in the spring semester at Texas Tech as well. We have I'm actively involved in the corporate laws committee of the American Bar Association, where we work on the model corporate act and update it for all of the various, I think there's 40 states, or however, maybe it's not 40, but there's a large, maybe 30 something states that use that model act, and we keep it updated. And I'm on that committee, and it's that's actually very interesting and challenging, and keeps me active. And I'm also remain active in the M&A committee of the American Bar Association as well. So I've got a few things going on.
Yeah, no doubt you have not slowed down one bit. Well, I want to thank you for spending time with us today, Glenn. I also want to let you know that you are now the first retired partner to both have a Weil family portrait and a segment on the Weil Alumni Interview Series. So I think it's befitting that you are the trailblazer in that regard. So again, thank you for your time today. It's always wonderful to see and hear from you. Weil alumni, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for future programs. Bye-bye.